The feeling of being lost is something so many of us are familiar with. It's not just a passing confusion or a momentary lapse in direction. It's deeper, heavier, a weight that sits in your chest, constantly reminding you that something is missing. You wake up, you go through the motions, you achieve what you're supposed to achieve, but there's always this emptiness, this nagging sense that all of it is somehow disconnected from who you really are. You might wonder why this happens, why life, with all its opportunities and possibilities, still feels hollow. Carl Jung, one of the most profound thinkers in modern psychology, believed that this feeling is not random. It happens because we are disconnected from the parts of ourselves that hold the answers we're looking for. He called this the self, the whole, unified version of who we are meant to be. But most of us never truly connect with it. Instead, we live fragmented lives, identifying only with the parts of ourselves that fit into the expectations of society, while the rest remains buried in the unconscious. Jung's idea of the self is not just another abstract philosophical concept. It's something real, something that exists within each of us, even if we don't fully understand it. The self is not just who you think you are. It's all of you, including the parts you've forgotten, ignored, or denied. Imagine for a moment that your personality is like a house. The rooms you live in, the ones you decorate and show to other people, are the conscious parts of yourself. These are the parts of you that you're aware of, the parts you present to the world. But there are also doors in this house that you keep locked, rooms you never enter because they make you uncomfortable. These are the hidden aspects of your psyche, the unconscious parts that you've pushed away because they don't fit your idea of who you should be. Jung believed that the reason we feel lost is because we've confined ourselves to only a small part of this house. We live in 1 or 2 rooms while the rest remains unexplored, and the longer we ignore those locked doors, the more disconnected we become from our true purpose.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
Purpose, in Jung's view, is not something you create out of thin air. It's not something you find by following a step-by-step guide or copying what others are doing. Purpose is already within you, waiting to be discovered, but it's hidden in the parts of yourself that you've been avoiding. Think about the things you've been taught to suppress. Your anger, your fear, your vulnerability, even your deepest desires. These emotions and instincts don't disappear just because you ignore them. They sink into your unconscious, becoming part of what Jung called the shadow. The shadow is the part of yourself that you don't want to look at, the part you're afraid to face because it's messy, chaotic, and inconvenient. But here's the paradox. The shadow is also where your greatest potential lies. It holds the pieces of you that you need to become whole. Jung believed that to find your purpose, you have to confront your shadow. You have to go into those locked rooms in your house, face what's inside, and integrate it into your conscious life. This process is what Jung called individuation, the path to becoming your true self. Individuation is not easy. It requires you to step outside your comfort zone and face parts of yourself that you've spent your whole life avoiding. It's not just about self-improvement or becoming a better version of yourself. It's about becoming whole, about integrating all the parts of who you are, both the light and the dark, into a unified whole. This is what Jung meant when he said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Enlightenment, in this sense, is not about escaping your flaws or weaknesses. It's about understanding them, accepting them, and learning from them. This is why so many people struggle to find their purpose. They look for it in the external world, in careers, relationships, or achievements, but they don't realize that the answers they're seeking can only be found within. Purpose is not something you achieve, it's something you uncover by peeling back the layers of who you think you are and discovering the truth underneath. But why do we resist this process? Why do we avoid the very thing that could bring us meaning and fulfillment? Jung believed that it's because confronting the shadow is uncomfortable. It forces us to look at parts of ourselves that we don't like, parts that we've been taught to hide. For example, you might have grown up believing that you need to be strong and independent, so you suppress your vulnerability and refuse to ask for help. Or maybe you were taught that being ambitious is selfish, so you bury your dreams and settle for a life that feels safe but unfulfilling. These patterns don't just disappear with time, they become deeply ingrained in your psyche, shaping your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in ways you don't even realize. When you start to confront your shadow, these patterns come to the surface, and it can feel overwhelming. This is why so many people avoid the process altogether. They distract themselves with work, relationships, or entertainment, hoping that the emptiness will go away on its own. But it doesn't. The shadow doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It waits, quietly influencing your life from the background. To begin the process of individuation, you have to be willing to face the discomfort. This doesn't mean diving headfirst into your deepest fears or trying to fix everything all at once. It means starting small, paying attention to the moments when your shadow reveals itself. For example, think about the last time you felt triggered by something. A comment from a co-worker, a disagreement with a friend, or even a random event that left you feeling angry, insecure, or frustrated. These moments are not random. They are clues, signals from your unconscious mind, pointing to the parts of yourself that need attention. Instead of reacting automatically or brushing these feelings aside, take a moment to reflect. What is this emotion trying to tell you? What belief or wound is it connected to? This kind of self-awareness is the first step toward integration. It's about bringing the unconscious into the conscious, shining a light on the parts of yourself that have been hidden in the dark. As you begin to integrate your shadow, you'll start to notice subtle but profound changes in your life. The things that used to trigger you will lose their power. The patterns that once felt unchangeable will begin to shift. And most importantly, you'll start to feel more connected to yourself. This connection is the foundation of purpose. When you're in touch with your true self, you don't have to force purpose or try to manufacture meaning. It arises naturally, like a river finding its course. This is what Jung meant when he said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." Purpose is not something you find by looking outward. It's something you awaken to by looking inward, by connecting with the deepest parts of who you are. But individuation is not a one-time event. It's a lifelong process, a continuous unfolding of the self. As you grow and evolve, new layers of the shadow will emerge and you'll be faced with new challenges and opportunities for integration. This is not something to fear or avoid. It's a natural part of the human experience. Each time you face your shadow, you become more whole, more authentic, and more aligned with your purpose. This is the path to true fulfillment, not a destination you arrive at, but a journey of constant discovery and growth. And as you walk this path, you'll begin to see that the feeling of being lost was never a sign that something was wrong with you. It was a sign that there was something within you waiting to be found. It was your shadow calling you back to yourself. It was the self reminding you that your purpose has been with you all along, waiting for you to awaken to it. The process of discovering purpose through Carl Jung's lens is not something that can be rushed or forced. It requires patience and a willingness to engage with the messiness of your inner world. The truth is, many of us don't even realize how much effort we put into running away from ourselves. We build lives that are so full of distractions, work, social media, constant entertainment, that we rarely stop to consider what's beneath the surface. But the more we distract ourselves, the more disconnected we become, and in that disconnection we feel lost. It's ironic, isn't it? The more we try to avoid discomfort, the more uncomfortable we become in our own skin. This is why Jung believed that true purpose can only be found by turning inward, by facing the parts of ourselves that we've been avoiding. It's not an easy process, but it is a necessary one if we want to live lives that feel meaningful and authentic. One of the most powerful tools Jung offered for this process is the idea of integration. Integration means bringing together all the fragmented parts of yourself, the parts you like, the parts you don't, and the parts you don't even know exist, into a unified whole. It's about taking the aspects of yourself that you've rejected or ignored and finding a way to accept and incorporate them into your conscious life. For example, you might think of yourself as a kind and caring person, but deep down you feel resentment or anger that you've never allowed yourself to fully acknowledge. That anger doesn't disappear just because you deny it. It festers, showing up in passive-aggressive comments, unspoken frustrations, or even physical tension in your body. Integration means recognizing that anger, understanding where it comes from, and finding a healthy way to express it. It means seeing that your anger is not inherently bad. It's a signal that something in your life needs to change, whether it's a boundary that needs to be set or a wound that needs to be healed. This process of integration is not just about emotions, it's also about the roles we play in life. Think about how many roles you've taken on that don't feel authentic to who you are. Maybe you've spent years being the responsible one, the peacemaker, or the achiever because that's what was expected of you. But deep down, those roles feel like a mask, a performance you put on to gain approval or avoid conflict. Jung believed that these roles or personas are a necessary part of life. We all need a persona to function in society, to interact with others, and to navigate the world. But the problem arises when we become so identified with our persona that we lose touch with the deeper parts of ourselves. Integration means recognizing that your persona is just one aspect of who you are, not the whole picture. It means giving yourself permission to step outside of those roles and connect with the parts of yourself that don't fit neatly into the expectations of others. This is where the idea of the shadow becomes so important. The shadow is not just a collection of repressed emotions or traits, it's also a treasure chest of untapped potential. It contains the parts of yourself that you've been taught to suppress, but that hold the key to your creativity, intuition, and sense of purpose. For example, if you've always been told that you're too sensitive, you might have pushed down your emotions in an attempt to toughen up. But in doing so, you've also cut yourself off from your empathy, your ability to connect deeply with others, and your capacity for emotional intelligence. Or maybe you've been told that you're too ambitious, so you've learned to downplay your goals and settle for less than what you truly want. That ambition didn't go away, it became part of your shadow, waiting for you to reclaim it. Integration means looking at these parts of yourself with curiosity and compassion, seeing them not as weaknesses but as sources of strength that can guide you toward your purpose. But how do you actually begin to integrate your shadow? It starts with awareness. Pay attention to the moments in your life when you feel triggered, defensive, or uncomfortable. These moments are often clues that your shadow is at play. For example, if you find yourself judging someone else for being arrogant, it might be a sign that there's a part of you that craves recognition, but that you've been taught to suppress. Or if you feel envious of someone's success, it might be a sign that there's a dream or goal within you that you've been ignoring. Instead of pushing these feelings away or judging yourself for having them, take a moment to reflect on what they might be trying to tell you. The shadow speaks in subtle, often uncomfortable ways, but if you're willing to listen, it can offer profound insights into what you truly value and where you want to go in life. As you begin to integrate your shadow, you'll notice that you start to feel more whole, more authentic, and more grounded in who you are. The things that used to trigger you will lose their power, and the judgments you once had about yourself and others will begin to soften. This doesn't mean that you'll never feel lost or uncertain again. Those feelings are a natural part of the human experience, but it does mean that you'll have a deeper sense of trust in yourself and your ability to navigate life's challenges. You'll start to see that purpose is not something you achieve or discover once and for all. It's something you create moment by moment, by living in alignment with your values, your passions, and your true self. And as you do, you'll begin to feel a sense of meaning that no external achievement or validation could ever provide. One of the most profound insights Jung offers is the idea that purpose is not about perfection. It's not about becoming some idealized version of yourself or erasing all your flaws. It's about embracing the messiness of being human, about finding meaning in the struggles and imperfections that make you who you are. Jung believed that the path to purpose is not a straight line, it's a spiral, a process of continual growth and discovery. Each time you face a challenge, confront your shadow, or integrate a new part of yourself, you move closer to the truth of who you are. And in doing so, you inspire others to do the same. This is perhaps the greatest gift of individuation. Not only does it help you find your own purpose, but it also creates a ripple effect, encouraging others to live more authentically and meaningfully. As you reflect on your own life, consider what parts of yourself you've been avoiding or suppressing. What emotions, desires, or dreams have you buried because they didn't fit into the roles you were taught to play? What patterns keep repeating in your life, and what might they be trying to teach you? These are the questions that can guide you toward a deeper understanding of yourself and your purpose. Remember, purpose is not something that exists outside of you. It's already within you, waiting to be discovered and expressed. And the more you connect with your true self, the more you'll begin to see that the feeling of being lost was never a failure. It was an invitation to find the parts of yourself that you've been missing all along.